This is the Fall River Commission on Disability meeting for Thursday, February 13th, 2020. I will begin with the reading of the open meeting law guide.
Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible.
Thank you. Public input.
There's no one here.
Okay. Roll call.
Chairman Dennis Pacelli.
Here.
Vice Chairman Debbie Pacheco.
Here.
Commissioner Sergeant Michael Hoare.
Here.
Commissioner Lisa Silva.
Here.
Attorney Gary Hobiak. And Commissioner Danny Robillard.
Here.
Approval of the minutes for the meeting of January 9, 2020.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting of Thursday, January 9th, 2020.
There is a second to that?
Second. Oh, sorry.
Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that brings us to the next item, which is,
Just he's to your right, right next to Eric. So Eric's to your right, and then to Eric's right is Attorney Howard. Okay. No, go ahead.
our guest presenter today is from the Southeast, is from SRTA, Mr. Eric Rousseau. We've had the pleasure of having many annual visits now from Mr. Rousseau, and so we're having him here today to give us our annual update and to take any questions, and the floor is all yours.
Great. Thank you very much. Good to be here with everybody. And I would say that two of the things that people may have heard the most about recently is that we've put in applications for discretionary grants for a couple of new opportunities for service. The first of which was through the state budget this year. There was discretionary funding that we applied for to possibly run fixed route service on Sundays. I know that's something that Commissioner Robillard has been interested in for a long time, and it's something that certainly the communities have been interested in for a long time. We applied for approximately $900,000 to do that. We were awarded approximately $318,181. That's about 35 to 40% of what we asked for, and it's not quite enough. So originally our plan had been to run the service for 12 months. Right now we're looking to try to run the service from August to the end of the calendar year. That won't interfere in any way with the demand response service that we're already running on Sundays. If anything, it'll expand the hours available for demand response service on Sundays during that time. It's entirely possible that the service will end at the end of December. We're hopeful that we can prove that it's a service that we need in our communities and that it's sustainable and viable, and we'll continue to work to cobble together funding afterwards to keep it going. But there is no promise, however, it is something we are certainly going to work towards. The second grant opportunity that we applied for was to have express fixed route service between Fall River and New Bedford. For anybody who's ridden the fixed route bus between the two cities, it can take over an hour at least, and probably closer to an hour and 15 minutes to make that trip. It's only 14 miles. It shouldn't take that long, but there's a lot of stops in between, and that ends up being why we have such a long travel time. Unfortunately, we were unsuccessful in getting that grant. But that's something that we'll continue to pursue. We think that there's a desire to have quicker travel between the cities, and certainly doing it in a way that's affordable is something that we're focused on. I think the primary reason why we weren't successful this time around was we didn't have private investment, and that was something that the grant was looking for, was to leverage some private investment in the service, some community buy-in from that standpoint. So if there's another opportunity, we will certainly go after that down the road. In terms of the services that we're already providing, I think last year I had mentioned that we've been hard at work on building up our IT infrastructure. That is taking longer than we'd hoped, but it continues to move forward. We're in the what we call a burn-in phase right now with our fixed route buses, where they are operating and doing all of their ADA announcements internally and externally at stops that are served by more than one route. And we are collecting all the data to ensure that it's all functioning correctly. Once that is happening, the next phase for us will be to work on signage at our terminals to allow people to know when they can expect the vehicle, and also to have an app for your phone so that you'll be able to identify when a vehicle could be coming. Part of that ITS infrastructure that we're working on is to have what are called mobile data terminals on our demand response vehicles, so that we'll have a little more flexibility for our drivers, and hopefully we can do better in terms of optimizing the schedule throughout the day as things change during our operating day. And in addition to that, we're going to be rolling out IVR, which is automated telephone calls, to alert people to upcoming trips, and potentially alert them that their demand response vehicle is, you know, such and such minutes away from coming to pick them up. Hopefully helping people know when to expect the vehicle, and reducing dwell times for the vehicle at stops when we're picking up our clients. One of the things that slows us down the most is if somebody isn't quite ready when we arrive because they don't know exactly when to expect us. So we're hoping that that'll start, people will start seeing that and hearing about that this summer, and that'll be a big help for our demand response service. Those are the big ticket items that we've been working on. I'm happy to field any questions. I'm sure there's a couple.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
Mr. Russo, it's nice to be back here. I was away for a little over a year, but it's nice to be back in this forum. Are these new microphones?
No.
You're good.
You're good.
So, you talked a little bit about Sunday service, so that's, where are we on extended night service for the lines, and which lines are up next? Presently, we still have the same 4 lines that we had since night service started, with the exception of the Market Basket. Is there anything else coming?
I should say, I did bury the lead on one of the biggest things that's happening, is that Commissioner Robillard will also be joining the SRTA Advisory Board starting up in February. So we'll be welcoming him as our rider representative. In terms of additional night service, at the moment there aren't any plans to roll out more night service. We do have a pilot running right now that you mentioned, the 5. That is a grant that we received funding for last year and is funded through the end of this fiscal year. That looks like something that has been very successful and that we'll be looking to continue past the end of this fiscal year.
So still no night service for Laurel number 3, either of the routes that go to Walmart, number 6 Pleasant, number 10 Rodman, and still no additional night service for BCC, which is tragic, I think, and no additional night service expansion for the industrial park. There are loads of people that can't access transportation after certain hours down at Amazon and other places within the industrial park. The state is sitting on a $2 billion rainy day fund. We really need to get the legislature involved in this, because those are critical needs, I believe. How many demand response vans do we have in Fall River?
In Fall River, about 15. We have 30 in total, and it's split pretty equally.
What are and I hear different takes on this from drivers, dispatchers. What are the exact hours of operation for demand response?
So the first vehicle rolls out of the garage at 5:20 in the morning and is expected to be back at the garage at 5:10 at night, Monday through Friday. And then Saturdays, it's about 6:20 to, I think it's about 8:05.
Now, night service on-demand response goes over past 5 o'clock?
I thought it.
Yeah, 10 to 10:10.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I'm not sure. I misspoke if I didn't say that.
Yeah,
It
okay.
goes Monday through Friday, it goes until 10:10.
You talked about the New Bedford service. What's the turnaround time for somebody that applies for demand response? If they fill out their application, about how long does it take before they get an answer?
So once we receive a completed application.
Yep.
We are required to turn that around within 21 days. If we do not successfully turn that around within 21 days, we are required to grant temporary status until such time as we can make a determination on that application.
What's the present age of the majority of the fleet, both on the lines and the vans?
It's, the larger vehicles are approximately the average age, right in the middle of our expected life, useful life, and that's about 6.5 years. And the high-end expected life for a large vehicle is about 12 years. Ours typically run about 15 to 16 years. We do a pretty good job of maintaining them. The vans are around about 4.5 years old, and the expected life for a van is between 5 to 7 years. When we retire a vehicle, we actually try to work with different community agencies who are in need of vehicles to try to pass that along to them, because they may not be doing the same miles and putting the same wear and tear on a vehicle. So a vehicle that has aged out for us probably will work quite nicely for somebody that may only need it on Tuesdays every week.
I know there are some 7s and 8s on the lines right now.
Yes. So we have 2008s on the line right now.
Yeah.
Can I back up just for a second?
Sure.
I just want to back up to get a couple of clarifications. By the way, thank you very much for having the brochures put in Braille. I appreciate that very much. And I'm sure that's available for any other blind and visually impaired person who
Yes.
may want to get. The temporary status, that kicks in after the 21 days?
So in the event that somebody brings a completed application to the authority and we do not fulfill our obligation within 21 days, they are automatically granted temporary status until such time as we complete the review of their application. Now, I can tell you that we are very good about ensuring that we're done within that 21 days.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah, we work very hard to make sure that people know right away whether or not they're going to be eligible. And if somebody has eligibility from other authorities, that just comes right over to us automatically. That we just get a letter from the other authorities that state, yes, so-and-so is already riding with us, and we grant them access. In addition, you can be a visitor to our service and have, in a 365-day period, 21 days of access to transportation without having to become certified with us. So if you had a guest from out of town who could use our service, they would be able to do that for 21 days in a calendar year. And it doesn't have to be sequential in any way. It could be, once a week for half a year. They could come and use our service.
Is it very difficult to take the service away after you've granted the temporary service?
Anytime that you take service away, it's difficult. But if you're referring to during the application period, if the application is denied, it's never a comfortable situation, but it could happen. Most likely in that case, we may either extend it out or try to figure out a way to have a limited availability to them, or not necessarily unconditional availability to them. But again, we never go over the 21 days.
Go ahead.
I can tell you, Dennis, that I use demand response frequently and have through a number of transit operators going all the way back to the former operator. And since First Transit has come in to operate this authority, But while there's work to be done and there clearly is, you just heard me mention about 5 lines that I believe need state intervention to get corrected because it's ridiculous. But on a whole, the transportation through the Southeastern Regional Transit Authority has never been better. Demand response has never had as many people riding it as it does right now. You almost never get refused a trip. They do everything they possibly can to get as many people in as they can on very short notice. And clearly you're better off to reserve it as quick as you can with as much time as you can to get the optimal pickup and drop-off times and locations that you want. But generally, if you call, you can get a ride. And the other thing going along with the temporary ridership, any certified user can also bring aboard with them on any trip 2 guests at any time. So that if you and I decided we were going to go down to BK's Tavern, and you weren't a certified user, I could have you as a guest, you and Donna anytime, and you would just pay the standard regular fare.
That's correct, and hopefully you don't find that you're being denied a trip at all. Our operator is under strict instructions to never deny a trip. There are instances where it would technically be allowed under the Federal Transit Administration guidelines. We do not allow it. So this is the one time where maybe the federal regulations don't supersede because we have contract obligations with First Transit to take those trips. Now what can be challenging is there is a 2-hour negotiated window for a pickup time.
Yep.
And that's what Commissioner Robillard is referring to, where it is, if you asked for 9 o'clock, but the only time we could pick you up was at 9:50, it may not be exactly the optimal time for you, but that may be what will fit within our schedule at that point.
Can tell you I've never been denied a trip.
Thank you.
All the call center people, I know them all well by now. They've always been courteous and professional, as have all the drivers that I've dealt with. And that goes back even towards the last operator as well. So,
That's great to hear.
But clearly, since First Transit has come on, there's been things that have changed, the elimination of zones, expanded night service, the reinstitution of Sunday demand response service. A lot of people don't know. We lost Sunday demand response for a number of years. And through grants and other things, though I have a personal pet peeve with that grant, it is what it is. And only because if it were the other way, it would be reverse discrimination. But it is what it is. Could you please explain briefly, Eric, within the last 3 to 6 months, the Transit Authority has broken in a little bit to Rhode Island. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So we haven't changed very much, but we've been working with RIPTA very closely over the last few years to identify how...
Sorry if I worded that wrong.
No, that's okay. To identify how we could have better connectivity between Providence and Fall River. And actually, RIPTA has some funding from mitigation needs because of deck resurfacing for I believe the Newport and the Pell Bridge. And they have been given some funds to operate express service from Providence to Fall River and then on to Newport and then back again from Newport to Fall River into Providence. And they're doing that, I think they're doing 6 round trips a day at the moment. And so that's really opened up some more opportunities for people to travel between Providence and Fall River.
What about Tiverton?
I don't believe that they stop in Tiverton at the moment. I think they continue through to the park and ride in Portsmouth when they get off the highway. and then they go down either East Main or West Main Road. I always get them confused.
We do go down to the Tiverton Casino then.
Okay,
Yes,
I
we
think
do
that's
do
what I
that.
was trying to get at.
Two,
Okay, sorry.
2 line buses a day and demand response on demand, which is beautiful. That's a fabulous service.
So that part is, yes, we do go into Rhode Island for that.
I think that's all I had. Thank you very much. I look forward to working with you in the other capacity, and I yield, Mr. Chairman.
I just have some question, maybe one question. I'll try to keep this brief, but I'm confused between, because I was a ride user for the MBTA for years, and theirs was a door-to-door service versus curb-to-curb. Can you kind of go into exactly what is down here in terms of your demand response? And also, issues like how can a blind person tell that it is an SRTA driver versus just somebody who wants to kidnap them or something like that?
Those are all very good points. Yeah, so we do provide an origin to destination service, and that is primarily delivered through a curb-to-curb service. However, upon request, we are happy to also provide door-to-door service. We do not provide door-through-door service. However, we will not go into a building with you or go potentially into somebody's residence. So that can be a little bit tricky. And that, just letting the booking agent know at the time of making the reservation is all we would need to know in order to mark that we're looking for door-to-door assistance for this trip. And in terms of drivers helping passengers identify who they are, they generally know who the passenger is, so they'll be asking, you know, Dennis, are you ready for your ride? And they would be happy to share with you, you know, what their name is, and they're with SRTA. But, you know, is there potentially somebody out there that could represent that they are the transit authority? That is always going to be a possibility. However, you know, our drivers are pretty well trained, and you know, for when they are there, they're always very accommodating and willing to work with you, and would certainly make sure that you knew who they were.
Quickly, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
What I might suggest is if someone with a visual impairment is going to be taking at the time of booking, you could ask the dispatcher to have the driver call in to dispatch and have the dispatcher call the visually impaired person to notify them when the van is out there.
Yep, that is absolutely something that we could do. And again, as I mentioned with our new IVR system, the automated telephone calls, you would, if you signed up for it and you had a cell phone available to list in the system, you would receive a call saying that your van is approximately 20 minutes away. And so you'd have an idea
It
of
gives you
when.
time to get down to whatever. Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
The dispatch call also works nice. If it's inclement weather and it's pouring rain and you have to stand out or sit outside waiting to see the vehicle, you could be drenched if it's not exactly on time, and there's a pickup window on both sides. So that dispatcher call was a very handy thing, both for visually impaired passengers and for other purposes.
And you bring up an excellent point with the pickup window. So when you're given a scheduled time, your scheduled time, again, as I said before, might be 9:50, but there's a 20-minute pickup window where we will come within 20 minutes of your scheduled time to pick you up. And that's 5 minutes before your scheduled time, so from between 9:45
And 15 after.
and then 15 after. And the reason that we do that is we also have a 5-minute wait time. So when we arrive on time for your pickup in that 20-minute window, we will guarantee that we will wait at least 5 minutes trying to locate you as a passenger. We will make efforts to have dispatch call you should we not be able to find you. And if we are unable to make contact and you know, figure out where you are, we would we would wait at least 5 minutes before we would leave.
I recall last year listening to a city council meeting, and there was a rather powerful story about an individual wasn't from Fall River, the person was from Swansea, who had cancer, and the drop-off on the part of SRTA seemed to be in a place where there were no bathroom facilities and so on and so forth. Has that situation improved?
At the moment, we haven't been able to change that situation. We're still trying to locate a central location that has adequate facilities as well. There's been discussion about doing it at the terminal. The concern with doing it at the terminal is there's a lot more traffic with larger vehicles there, and the idea of having the additional traffic of potentially council on aging or Veterans Affairs vehicles or taxis or any other type of means that one may used to get to the Boston Hospital van could put a burden on the terminal that isn't really conducive for a safe operating area. The terminal space is very limited in terms of its footprint. Originally, the location that was selected was a parking lot for Fall River COA, and we were unaware at the time that the location wasn't open when we were there. But that is something that we continue to work on to try to identify the right mix between having the appropriate parking, having appropriate facilities, and also having appropriate access to the highway so we can have the trip be as expedient as possible.
While they don't actually go into the terminal, there are other vehicles that are in the vicinity of the terminal parking lot. So maybe you can't, in technicality, offer them terminal space, but I see no reason why a COA van or any other pickup service that needed to transport somebody that may need access to a restroom on a first-come, first-served basis couldn't pull in there. I mean, frankly, I think we ought to give them the space. I'll say that they ought to be able to go in there and and just drop off and do what they need to do. But short of that, there's always room on the outskirts of the lot for other vehicles. There's taxis over there all the time.
Yeah, there's taxis quite often on 4th Street, and there is a kiss and ride on 5th Street. The only concern with 5th Street is it is a bit of a hill. And, you know, right now we've been fortunate with good weather, but that certainly could change at any time. And typically the population that we're talking about serving with the Boston Hospital van are those who may have more trouble with the hills and you know, difficult conditions. So what we always envisioned for this service was to have the drop-off vehicle meeting the pickup vehicle itself. And so with that, we just need that type of space to allow for 1 or 2 or 3 vans, that ability to transfer passengers so that they are safely and securely being moved from one vehicle to the next. So we're still open to the idea of the terminal, but we haven't figured out how to coordinate that in a safe and appropriate manner.
So has there been a change in the drop-off
No.
procedures in the meantime? Like, I remember one suggestion that was tossed about was Bristol Community College, and there were a number of suggestions that were tossed about, so I was just wondering, is it still that same area where there were no appropriate facilities, or has that situation changed, even on a temporary basis?
It hasn't changed on a temporary basis. Going to Bristol Community College certainly has a lot of room. It's very appealing. One of the concerns that we had is that the time of day that we do our pickup is a busy time of day for that street in general, and that we were worried about just adding our vehicles and the vehicles for the passengers who are trying to make the trek to Boston, which is already a 2-hour ride, all that much longer. So it's trying to balance all of those moving parts at once, and we have had trouble too on the returning end, where COAs close up shop at a certain time And if we're not back in time because of traffic or whatever it may be, people have had trouble getting home. So one thing that we have been communicating to the COAs and to certainly our operations, that should we arrive late coming back, those passengers are our responsibility until we either get them to a ride that will take them home or we take them home ourselves, whether they are our clients or not.
Whose call is it, whether the van can go into the terminal?
It's the authorities working with the operating company.
That's something we really need to look at, because it seems to me that's the most logical place, and
Yeah.
it wouldn't be an all-day thing. I mean, you go to Boston, what, once, twice a week, if that?
Yeah, once a week from Fall River. Yeah.
What's the maximum number of people that you transport there when you start off from the terminal in the morning?
So the concern isn't necessarily with our one van mixing in with our fixed route vehicles. It's the potential of others, COA vans, potentially who aren't accustomed to being in that area. It's just it's a difficult area to have other vehicles in. Because right now, we don't allow any through traffic. We only allow for SRTA vehicles and Peter Pan vehicles to come onto the property.
But if other COA vans didn't have permission, and this COA van had permission of the authority, case closed.
Yeah, I
you
understand where you're coming from.
You might not want to look at it that way, but that's the way it is. If the authority grants permission of a Fall River Council on Aging van to come into the authority to allow passengers to board there and drop off there, end of discussion. I don't care if Taunton's trying to come in, Barrington, anyone else. Fall River would have permission. They get to do it. If we grant another community permission, they get it. That's how it goes. That's why there's a board. That's why there's an authority.
I was just concerned about the level of advocacy beyond what I heard last year, and it's too bad that, you know, some of these agencies can't get together and try to figure this out, because it really sounds like, you know, dropping someone off where there's no facilities and stuff like that after having cancer treatments seems rather inhumane.
I can tell you right now, Dennis, as I take on my new role, this will be a top priority for me, because it absolutely makes zero sense to me that the Fall River Council on Aging can't come into the Fall River terminal. Absolutely ludicrous. I yield.
Any more questions? Mr. Russo, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Actually, I have one more question. I hesitated to ask it, but I'm going to ask it. And that is, our work group has been working in conjunction with a resolution that this commission is on record approving. We thought we were making progress with a certain taxi company in Fall River, and I won't mention the name in public, but we thought we were making progress. I almost felt like it was a done deal, because SRTA was willing to do some training for the specific taxi company. From your end of it, have you heard anything at all from this specific taxi company? This issue, by the way, is the ability to have 24-hour taxi service for persons using wheelchairs, while the others, those of us, have that opportunity. People in wheelchairs do not. And so I was just wondering if there was anything on your end, if anything, we can get something on the record here and about if you may have heard anything on your end.
We have not heard anything more. We've reached out a few times. I can't say that we've reached out recently, because again, I think somewhat similar to the sentiments that you just expressed, that we didn't get a lot of feedback when we would reach out. We did drop an MOU to do free training for their drivers for mobility securement specifically. We were open to working with them on any sort of wheelchair lifts on vans if they needed help with either training mechanics on how to work with them, or potentially even do work for them, you know, at a cost, we'd be open to that as well. But we really haven't heard much back from them.
Okay, we will be going back to the city council sooner rather than later, like really soon.
And again, we would be happy to work with somebody if, you know, in that arena to ensure that they were properly trained and had the proper equipment.
Mr. Chairman, could I add one thing?
Yep.
Not only, let me be very clear, Mr. Russo and the Transit Authority has been spectacular
Yep.
in trying to help this commission work through a very delicate issue, which has been on the horizon since 2006, by the way. This is not a new issue. It's had some bumps in the road, but it's going to get resurfaced very, very quickly as we go forward. And I just want to give Mr. Russo and the Transit Authority kudos because they've done everything they could to assist this commission in this process. And not only is this commission on record supporting accessible taxi service, we brought an ordinance to the city council which they rejected informally because they never voted on it, but clearly the votes were not there to pass it. So that was an informal rejection, but it was never technically voted on by the council. I want to be clear. Thank you. I yield.
So with that, Mr. Russo, thank you very much. I appreciate your coming back to us and really giving us updates annually. We really appreciate that.
Anytime, I'm happy to come.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ari.
Thank you. And Dennis, Gary Howiak speaking. I have to excuse myself to be at a 4 o'clock meeting. Thank you.
Okay, I'm putting my head together
That's
again.
okay. Take your time.
Work group updates.
Okay.
ADA. Are there any updates on ADA? We'll be meeting on February 26th with some department heads involved in the transition plan and self-assessment to see if we can come up with some kind of strategies, but we have not met since before the holidays. So unless is Tammy in the room?
No, she's not
I
here.
didn't want to embarrass anybody, so.
Yeah, no.
Okay, so I don't have any updates from our end. Policies,
No updates at this time.
finance, we don't have any updates at this time.
No.
Outreach,
None for outreach.
old business, new business.
New business, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, go ahead, you go first.
I would like to see, within the next 90 days, I'd like to see a review of all Fall River Disability Commission policies. Within 60 to 90 days or sooner, I'd like to have the chair of this commission reach out to the chair of the ordinance committee and try to get the accessible taxi issue back in the hands of the ordinance committee where I think it belongs. And I'd like to put those two items in the form of a motion.
Okay, there's a motion to, help me here.
Within 90 days, I'd like to see a review of all Fall River Disability Commission policies
Okay.
for review and some amendment and some tweaking. And within 90 days or sooner, I'd like to have the chair reach out to the chair of the ordinance committee to get the accessible taxi issue back before the ordinance committee of the Fall River City Council. That's my motion.
Okay. Can we break those down into two separate?
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's do the second one first, which would be to have the chair reach out, this commission chair reach out to the ordinances and legislation commission chair to get back on the agenda concerning the accessible taxi. So do I hear a second to the motion by Mr. Robillard?
I'll second that.
Okay. Is there a discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Okay. The second one is just to go over, review policies within the next 90 days to see if they need to be tweaked or amended or thrown out or
Yep.
changed. I may be go ahead.
That's
go ahead.
exactly
All right.
that's exactly what I'm looking for.
Okay, so do I hear a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion?
I would like that.
Okay.
So, Danny, I just need you to clarify all of that. So you're looking for whatever policies that this commission has put together, or can you just clarify all of that for
Sure,
me?
any policy that we have in place, that's
That the commission has in place?
absolutely,
Okay.
Okay.
yep.
I think I've kept all of them.
I would assume that the Health and Human Services Department would have all those on file
They-
as well.
They should.
And I do.
And
Okay.
who's responsible for reviewing that? That would be Dennis? Like, how does that work? Do we
Well, we
review it in a
There-
meeting?
There's a policy
Yeah,
work group.
There's a policy
Which
work
is what
group,
I
which is-
chair, so
Which the
that-
vice
yeah.
chair chairs. So
Yes.
we would be working with Debbie on that.
And then that would come before this,
And
the
that will
full
come back
board?
to this full board.
It's just a review to see what we
Right.
have,
Yep.
Right.
what we need, what we don't have, what
Yep.
we might want to put in, what we might want to take out, much like we did a number of years ago
Yes.
when we excommunicated the bylaws from this commission.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did we vote on this already? No?
No.
We're in discussion.
No.
How was
Oh,
all
I'm
those-
There was a motion I made,
Okay.
vice chair seconded, we're in discussion.
Any other, thank you. Any other questions or discussion?
No.
Okay, hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. I do have a piece of new business. I'll be very, very brief, but this morning, the Massachusetts Office on Disability, in conjunction with the Secretary of State's office, conducted a 2-hour conference. I was able to listen in by phone. I must say that the communications was very choppy and staticky. I did get some things out of it. But I did send to most of the commissioners, and I will make sure that everybody else gets it, the slides. There were 7 attachments that I was presented with. It's slide information and also other information about accessibility. The fact that I think the period of mid-March to, I don't know, May is when I guess that's the census period. And from a disability standpoint, I learned this morning that if there are deaf individuals, you can request to have a census taker the Census Bureau can arrange to have an ASL interpreter come to your house and assist in filling out the census questionnaires. There are methods to have it put into Braille for those who would like it done that way. And like I said, there's a lot of material that I'll make sure everybody gets. And I'm also exploring with Pam and FRG-TV to see if we can have some of that posted on the bottom, on the screen of FRG-TV, so that you'd have just things like telephone numbers and on their website, which is 2020census.gov. On that website, there's a video that demonstrates exactly how to fill out the census. If people want to go on and look at that, they can do that. The website is 508, which is the accessibility standards for meeting technical accessibility standards. So that website is accessible. I haven't tested it yet. I just found out this morning, so I will test it. But you can go on and look at a video presentation on how to fill out the census forms. And there is other information in there as well, in the attachments, and I'll make sure that all the commissioners get that. I've also sent it to the mayor's office. I'm not sure who coordinates the census process for the city of Fall River, and I'm in the process of finding that out.
I think that's the Board of Elections, Mr. Chairman.
Well, ironically, I did send one to Kelly Souza Young, the same materials that you're all getting. I sent it to her as well. So, this this is very crucial. It's very, very crucial, because a lot of determination on how much funding you get from Medicare to Medicaid to Social Security to school lunch programs to education. A lot of the federal programs are determined by the census. So it's very, very important that everybody gets counted and that we pay attention to that. So, is there any questions about that? I'll put this on the agenda again in March, just in case there's any follow-up information. Okay. And also in the March meeting, which will be, is it March 14th?
It's actually the 12th,
March
yeah.
12th?
Yes.
12th?
Yeah.
March 12th. Dennis.
We will have Sergeant Kevin Dolan from the FRPD. We'll be talking about the renewal of the disability parking enforcement program for another year.
Okay.
Is there any other new business?
No.
Okay, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Those in favor?
We need a second.
I'll second that, Dennis.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We're adjourned.